The Hour of the Dragon continues, with Conan barking out new orders to noble Pallantides. "The trumpets of the Nemedians!" exclaimed Pallantides, "and hark, how our own blare upon their heels! Dawn is breaking, and the captains are marshalling the hosts for the onset. Mitra be with them, for many will not see the sun go down behind the crags." "Send my squires to me," exclaimed Conan, rising with alacrity and casting of his velvet night garment. He seemed to have forgotten his forebodings at the prospect of action. "Go to the captains, and see that all is in readiness. I will be with you as soon as I don my armor." His orders don't need much translation, as he dismisses the other man and commands him to see to the preparation of the battle that is to come. Many of Conan's ways were inexplicable to the civilized people he ruled, and one of them was his insistence on sleeping alone in his chamber or tent. Pallantides hastened from the pavilion, clanking in the armor he had donned at midnight, after a few hours' sleep. He cast a swift glance over the camp, which was beginning to swarm with activity, mail clinking, and men moving about dimly in the uncertain light among the long lines of tent. Stars glimmered palely in the western sky, but long pink streamers stretched along the eastern horizon, and against them the dragon banner of Nemedia flung out its billowing silken folds. Pallantides turned towards a smaller tent nearby, where slept the royal squires. These were tumbling out already, roused by the trumpets, and as Pallantides called to them to hasten, he was frozen speechless by a deep, fierce shout and the impact of a heavy blow inside the king's tent, followed by a heart-stopping crash of a falling body. There sounded a low laugh that turned the general's blood to ice. Echoing the cry, Pallantides wheeled and rushed back into the pavilion. He cried out again as he saw Conan's powerful frame stretched out on the carpet. The king's great two-handed sword lay near his hand, and a shattered tent pole seemed to show where his sword had fallen. Pallantides' sword was out, and he glared about the tent, but nothing met his gaze, save for the king and himself. It was empty, as it had been when he left it. Here we arrive at two key points. One is that Conan is ultimately a man who is incomprehensible to his adoptive people. They cannot understand him because of how different he is, how violent and dark and also gargantuan he is on not just a physical, but a metaphysical and spiritual level. Conan is a great man of history, and so great that those around him are left in awe of him, so that there's almost a temptation to use the term stupor mundi to describe him. Stupor mundi means the great wonder of the world, and is a good term to describe Conan the Cimmerian, who is truly the great wonder of the Hyborian age. The master of a dozen languages, a tested warrior, an expert on the laws of his kingdom, a former sailor and shipbuilder, and a man who has won likely 100 battles or more. He is no less grand, no less magnificent than Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings. The difference is that while we have one major and great novel for Aragorn, we've dozens of tales of Conan, and also one great novel, so that we know a little more about Conan's life than we do Aragorn. The two of them naturally are roughly equivalent to one another. That said, we have here the subtle seeds being planted by the talented Robert E. Howard as he demonstrates that Conan is a man alone. He has no heir, he has friends certainly, but none of them can truly understand him, so that he's always a man alone. In this way, he is likely a man who has begun to become hounded by the shadows in more than one way. Archetypally, he's alone, and not only haunted, but being hunted, in a manner of speaking, by not just external, but also internal shadows. It leaves Conan likely hungry for some measure of company that might understand him, or otherwise give him something that none of his men and none of the women of his harem could: a family and a son. He has plenty of women. This we know from an earlier short story where it mentioned that he has a seraglio or harem, but the fact is he's not gotten for himself a proper heir, that is to say, a son. As to the other issue, you can guess it involves Pallantides rushing forward to go check up on his liege lord. Your Majesty! Pallantides threw himself on his knee beside the fallen giant. Conan's eyes were open. They blazed up at him with full intelligence and recognition. His lips writhed, but no sound came forth. He seemed unable to move. Voices sounded without. Pallantides rose swiftly and stepped to the door. The royal squires and one of the knights who guarded the tent stood there. "We heard a sound within," said the knight apologetically. "Is all well with the king?" The men heard a sound just as Pallantides did. The king is now reduced to a cripple who cannot move, cannot contribute all that effectively to the battle that is to come. The external shadows have thus come home to roost, to bite at Conan, one might say. As we find out, Conan has suffered an unexpected attack. None has entered or left the pavilion this night. "None save yourself, my lord," answered the knight, and Pallantides could not doubt his honesty. "The king stumbled and dropped his sword," said Pallantides briefly. "Return to your post." As the knight turned away, the general covertly motioned to the 5 royal squires, and when they had followed him in, he drew the flap closely. They turned pale at the sight of the king stretched upon the carpet, but Pallantides' quick gesture checked their exclamations. The general bent over him again, and again Conan made an effort to speak. The veins in his temples and the cords in his neck swelled with his efforts, and he lifted his head clear off the ground. Voice came at last, mumbling and half intelligible. The thing in the corner." The general tries to understand what it is that has befallen his liege lord, yet is utterly confused as he doesn't see the thing which attacked the king. Conan, for his part, is exasperated by the man's inability to see what he's seen, so he directs the man to the corner of the tent, with Pallantides finding nothing. His inability to see the dangers that lie all around him is a great contrast with the Cimmerian's ability to perceive what lies beyond the light that is to be found in the war tent. The description of what Conan saw is, however, fairly chilling, and is a beast that there can be no fighting back for one such as Conan. There's a reason that this part of the book is so iconic. It was there in the corner, muttered the king, tossing his lion-maned head from side to side in his effort to rise. A man, at least he looked like a man, wrapped in rags like a mummy's bandages, with a moldering cloak drawn about him and a hood. All I could see was his eyes, as he crouched there in the shadows. I thought he was a shadow himself, until I saw his eyes. They were like black jewels. I made at him and swung my sword, but I missed him clean. How? Crom knows, and splintered that pole instead. He caught my wrist as I staggered off balance, and his fingers burned like hot iron. All the strength went out of me, and the floor rose and struck me like a club. Then he was gone, and I was down, and curse him! I can't move. I'm paralyzed. Of course the great king has been left utterly paralyzed and helpless, as I've been saying over and over again, but the most chilling part has yet to be revealed. Pallantides lifted the giant's head, and his flesh crawled. On the king's wrist showed the blue marks of long, lean fingers. What hand could grip so hard as to leave its prints on that thick wrist? Pallantides remembered that low laugh he had heard as he rushed into the tent, and cold perspiration beaded his skin. It had not been Conan who laughed. The revelation that the laugh was not that of Conan could well have been guessed at by any reader. The great warrior, though, notes to his horror something that would likely chill the blood of any man: the marks on Conan's wrist. The blue marks of long, lean fingers could not have ordinarily occurred, and yet it has so that what's been done is something that no man could ever accomplish without supernatural aid. Naturally, Conan is too stubborn to recognize defeat, for he has indeed been defeated before the first sword strike has even been swung. "Put my harness on me and tie me into my saddle," he whispered. "I'll lead the charge yet." Pallantides shook his head, and the squire plucked his skirt. "My lord, we are lost if the host learns the king has been smitten. Only he could have led us to victory this day." "Help me lift him on the dais," answered the general. Pallantides is not wrong here. He thinks quick and does what he can to spare his king and to try and rescue Aquilonia from humiliation and disaster. That said, the weakness of the Cimmerian is also strongly reminiscent in a lot of ways of the bouts of sudden weakness of Robert the Bruce from the Scottish Wars of Independence, so that it can be concluded that it was likely this that inspired Robert E. Howard here. Our lips must be sealed forever as to what happens in this tent, he said at last. The kingdom of Aquilonia depends on it. One of you, go fetch me the officer Villanus, who is a captain of the Pelian spearmen. The squire indicated, bowed, and hastened from the tent, and Pallantides stood staring down at the stricken king, while outside trumpets blared, drums thundered, and the roar of the multitudes rose in the growing dawn. Presently the squire returned with the officer Pallantides had named, a tall man, broad and powerful, built much like the king. Like him, also, he had a thick black hair, but his eyes were grey, and he did not resemble Conan in his features. "The king is stricken by a strange malady," said Pallantides briefly. "A great honor is yours. You are to wear his armor, and ride at the head of the host today. None must know that it is not the king who rides." "It is an honor for which a man might gladly give up his life," stammered the captain, overcome by the suggestion. "Mitra grant that I do not fail of this mighty trust." This is the trick that Pallantides happens upon, as he calls upon one of the largest and most fearsome warriors in the Aquilonian army, Vallanus, a man unrivaled by any other in height, muscularness, and in terms of loyalty. He demonstrates his loyalty by not seizing the opportunity to make a grab at kingship, or fake at being Conan and seizing power, or otherwise doing away with the Cimmerian. Instead, he reveals himself to be a man of honor who loves his king and nation and pledges himself honored and moved to have been chosen. This sort of trick and narrative idea is clearly a variant of the Prince and the Pauper, which was then a popular story in which Robert E. Howard would have read. It is also evident that he was eager to turn it on its head, so that there might appear to be people of Aquilonia the death of their much-beloved king without actually killing Conan. So that in a manner of speaking, Howard is already paving the way for a kind of internal eucatastrophe when the king returns. Conan will seem as though he is coming back from the dead, and come back more resplendent and glorious than ever before, or so it will seem to his subjects. The lesson that can be learned from this part of the Hour of the Dragon is that of occasionally leaving your hero broken, crippled, and otherwise defeated. The problem with most authors is that they have a particular pet character that they never wish to see reduced or humiliated in any manner. The reason that this is so important to take note of is that there's a few writers who are willing to do this. Most are so attached to their pet character that they will not show him broken down and defeated, and yet still defiant. The proper balance between defiant and humiliated is one that also escapes most authors. One can easily see the inspirations for this side of Conan in this story, such as Sigurdur, Heracles, and Odysseus. What is more is that the character is one who tastes humiliation in the utmost in a manner that most authors of today cannot fully grasp. It is why more writers should read Howard's work. They should imitate and learn from him. Why imitate him? Well, they already do plenty of that without realizing it. So why not imitate his good habits and knowledge, and pour as much attention as he did into world building? Howard's skills are vastly underestimated, as a storytelling is underrated. He is someone who had a grasp of fine storytelling in a manner that few people grasp today. There's a reason that The Hour of the Dragon is still adapted today in comic book and graphic novel and BD format more than even Tolkien's work. It is because they resonate to this day. So don't always give victory to your heroes and heroines, but humiliation and failure, it can develop them as it did Conan the Cimmerian.